Well, good morning, and we will kind of get things underway here because everybody's on a tight schedule today. And appreciate you meeting with us to talk about this housing bundle that we would like to present you the House offer on. And we can discuss them and answer any questions, and that'll start us out. But anything you want to say, Senator, to start out?
Yeah, if you don't mind, we had a bill below the line, we put in 282, it was 2212, and before that, it was two single bills. I could lay out a little bit of what we had there if you would like.
Okay.
One of them was similar to, I'm sure you're familiar with the federal LIHTC. It was kind of a duplication of the federal LIHTC. It was a state LIHTC. $7.4 million fiscal note, which was Senate Bill 369, and that's for low to moderate income housing, and it's a state tax credit. And then the second bill, it was 375. It had an $18 million fiscal note, and the key components of it was we were targeting some counties. So counties under 8,000 would have $2 million guaranteed to go to them counties. And the percentage is, it's in them counties, 35% up to 100,000. So the max that credit in them counties under 8,000 per unit would be $35,000. That's to help out with the appraised value problem in the rural areas. Also, we could use modular housing. And then we had a second phase. It was from 8,000 to 25,000. It had $2 million. Again, it was a 32% ratio in that county range, which would take it up. It's capped at 100,000 on the valuation, so it would be a 32,000 or 32% for the first 100,000. It's zero after that. And then the remainder of the money, the 14 million, would be from county 75,000 or all the way down to one population. The rest would be able to be used. If they're over 25,000, it'd be a 30%. Basically for the first 100,000, zero after that. Trying to, we've got all different sizes counties, trying to get creative and look, see how we can work on the appraised value. That's a tax credit that's good for 5 years. It's sellable, so it's state tax credit. So them are really the two big peanuts that I've been working on. So.
Yeah, they happen to be in what we're going to visit with you about because I think they're good ones and could do a lot of good across the state. And we'll go through. Might be best on ours because the rest of them that we have in here are all from House bills, and maybe it'd be easier to pass this out to you, and then I'll explain what they are,
Sure, that'd be great.
and then you can ask questions. Some of them are simple.
You
And
got a rundown or?
I have a little sheet that tells a little bit about them, and kind of what the House offer is. Your two bills are on there. Now, you'll see that they have a cap, one on years, one on dollars that are in here on the House offer. But we think that, we do think they're very good bills, having looked through them. And then we've added on this, ones that we had generally went through the Financial Institutions Rural Development Committee, and they were House Bill 2268, and that is enact the Kansas Rural Home Loan Guarantee Act, and this is a bill that would basically cover the gap, kind of a gap coverage on the difference between what the appraisal is and what the cost to build or cost to renovate is, and it's got a $2 million limit on it, and it's in for counties less than 10,000, where the problem is generally the biggest. And it's got a limit of how much it can't be more than, it can't be more than 80% of the appraised value of the home. The amount that exceeds 80% of the appraised value of the home, but no more than 125%. So it would be that gap. If it costs more to build a house than what you can borrow on it, this helps cover some of that gap, which is a common occurrence in rural areas right now, other areas too, but.
Senator Fasco has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So those homes, you're going to help them out a little bit, but are you going to confirm that they have other funding to complete the project?
They will have to, because they will go through a regular bank or financial institution, so all the same standards have to apply, and this is a guarantee for only that portion that exceeds the amount. So if it was a $25,000 difference, it could guarantee that through, and it will go through by the KHRC. We'll do it, and so the financial institutions underwrite the loan, and if it goes back, the only risk on out of that $2 million is that piece right there. The financial institutions have all the other risk.
Has there been a cap decided on it? Because, I mean, I hate to, someone could build $1 million house and
Well,
have a $200,000 gap and.
Well, it would have to be, on this, it would have to be that exceeds 80% of the appraised value and of the home, but no loan amount above 125% of the appraised value. So there is a cap. The cap would be that 125%. You know, if the gap was $1 million and the appraised value was you know, an amount that you took 125% of the appraised value, and it was less than what the amount was, you could not guarantee above that. So that's theoretically the cap.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had some kind of cap that one individual could claim per unit. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, on this, I mean, they would be, of course, they would be submitted individually by a bank for a borrower. So, and so if you'd run into the issue that I feel that if it got too much, the bank's not going to make the loan because if they could guarantee, you know, 75,000 of it, but there was still another 200,000 to go.
Sure.
They're probably not going to make the loan.
Right. I was just thinking, I'd hate to see like someone build $1 million house and it praised for 800,000. They do 200,000. You know, that means then one guy got 10% of the cap. Just thinking. We want to encourage more smaller dollar investments, but just something to think about,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
you.
And
I
I was just going to say it covers land and building purchase, renovation and new construction, equipment and installation costs, pre-development costs that may be capitalized, financing, capitalized interest during construction, and like architect's fees and all. So it's got certain components that are in there. And with $2 million, the total amount that could be outstanding, and if the 2 million is exceeded, then they'd have to wait for some money to be paid back in order to have a guarantee after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Kelly, does this include both rural and urban areas?
Well, it is in, this one is in a county where the population is less than 10,000. So it was generally be rural areas. And this is actually probably where, at least in what I've seen, you run into more issues in the fact in a rural area where somebody is coming in and building a single house and there's not many comparables, and it comes out that the appraisal's less than what you got in it. And so this is just to help that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with it. We'll have to discuss the
Okay.
overall package, but I just consider cap so one user doesn't get too much of it and multiple people. Go ahead and explain your next one.
Okay. The next one is 2236, and this is a bill, and again, it's in rural areas, population less than 10,000, that an appraiser can exclude the sales approach from their appraisal because there are often no comparables, and there are certain situations, if the property is unique in style or square footage or both, and if there exists a lack of available comparable sales within 30 miles. So on that, and then it also has a provision that if they are, and this is only on the appraisal, so there has to be a financial institution involved. And if that financial institution is going to sell the loan or guarantee the loan, then the sales, they can say they won't accept that appraisal because they need one with the sales approach in it. So it's just another tool in the smaller counties where there's often no comparables that haven't happened to let that sales approach be excluded in certain circumstances.
Okay, yeah, I get it, and the financial institution's got to approve it still.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I get that. Is there any questions? Nope. I don't think you have a sunset, do you?
I don't think we,
If it's not working, we're gonna know. And
Yeah.
we'll have to repeal it pretty quick, but I think it'd work. I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
The bank's gotta accept it, so.
and we work through with the appraisers and association and all to make sure that it'll work. And one of the pieces that was put in from the original bill as we received it was that the bank had the opportunity to not accept it when they had situations that wouldn't allow it. And that was one of the amendments. We made amendments on all of these bills as they originally came to us. The first one we talked about, that had been the state treasurer's office was going to be involved, and we moved that out of there to the KHRC because they're more in tune to home lending than the state treasurer's office would be.
Yeah.
And so we moved it over there and then set the 2 million cap. When we received it, there was not a total cap on it, and we put a cap on it in committee. And the third one is House Bill 2569, and this one was also amended in the class. It's in the committee rather heavily. Historic Kansas Act, and it's got two components to it. One is a tax credit of 10% for structures 50 years or older where someone doesn't want, where a buyer or developer coming in. This was aimed particularly in downtowns that, and there are population limits on some of these, but like your question on the urban area, in the urban area, there are there could be a number of towns that have grown together, but they are still their own town and they have their own population. If they qualify for that in that area, they could work. Some of that could work. And so there's a 10%, you can do the 10% without going through all the historic tax credit filings and have to have, your building listed, has to be a contributing structure and all of that. You can go through this a more simplified approach and get a 10% credit on cost and expenses for this. And we put in some limits. Mainly, we looked at what are a lot of our amendments would to cut down the original fiscal note on it because it was pretty wide open. And so we said that in ours that you have to, on the 10%, you have to spend at least your cost and expenses 25,000 and over, so that you would have got, originally I believe it was 2,000, so you could have a lot of very low amounts that would create a lot of paperwork and a lot of following on it, not to exceed 500,000. So we put a cap on those, and like I say, they were aimed at upper story housing a lot because of it would help rehab a downtown. You would be able to rehab a building and then maybe put upper story housing. And there's also a provision that they can also include like $20,000 for fire suppression on the upper floors, and that comes into the total of do not exceed 500,000.
We did a piece last year that was the RHID piece for the second, third floor. So I think this piece works together. I'm guessing on the historic, so it's got to take it back to historic.
No, this one does not.
Doesn't.
Because they're they're buildings that are, they are over 50 years old, but a lot of them are not going to be.
No penalties if it's changed. Is there a time period they have to leave it the same?
On these, there's no filings with the state historic tax credits, or if someone does federal tax credits, there's no filings, and you don't get into, on this one, paint colors matching and all of that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of the federal ones, and then you go and change them, and then the feds come back and want their money back. This isn't that kind of deal.
No, this one is not like that.
I think Senator Hildebrandt's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and that kind of segues really good into my concern about the bill on page 5, line 23 to 25. If there's no historical value, why did you guys amend in that the State Historical Society may adopt rules and regulations on this?
Well, this one, on this one, the rules and regulations will be adopted by the Department of Revenue, and the State Historical will adopt the rules and regulations for the historic structures. I believe that's right, David, that it's split up two separate. So Department of Revenue, this can be a state tax deduction. You do it through your income tax, and actually the monitoring of it comes basically if you get audited on it. But it defines kind of what the expenditures are, and then the historic ones, because that falls into the more detailed category of what you can do. The historic ones will be adopted by the State Historic Society.
So is it a single year write-off, or is it
It's over it can be, this one, I believe it's 10 years.
10 years? Up to 10?
Yeah.
Further questions? Go ahead.
Okay, and so, like I say, this one is when there's buildings that someone wants to rehab, but they're not going to do extensive enough work to make the state tax historic credits, or their building may not qualify for it, it can still an avenue that can improve a structure. And the whole idea really behind all of these is to revitalize some of the downtowns, and if you can move people upstairs in them, then you get a new look at your community. It's got a chance to go. I'd say this one, we put a cap on it. It didn't have a cap before. The second part of this is the actual tax credit one, that a historic structure tax credits. So they're going to have to be a contributing structure. They're going to have to go through all the hoops that you have to do if you want historic tax credits. So you do get into colors, you get into, I mean, where I work, we're doing the outside of a building now and matching the mortar, so that it matches the 100-year-old building. So you get into all of that with these. So they're more detailed and they take more time. And so we've got this bill set up several categories, and we've pretty much followed the state and federal tax program where expenditures equal $5,000 or more. And normally the state credits are 25%. And so this puts in some categories that it could move to 30% with a population between 9,500 and 50,000. So over 50,000, it falls into the 25% category. And 40% of the qualified expenditures incurred for the qualifying improvements, and they do have to go through the process to where it's audited and all the qualified improvements are identified and have to be approved when you're finished with the job to get the credits. And those are for cities with a population of less than 9,500 people. And then, like I said, the 25% continues. Otherwise, the amount is 50,000. And this one does not have a cap on it to keep it in place with what we have now. And a cap that, as it was found out about 10 years ago or so, the cap completely destroyed the state tax program pretty much in Kansas, because the developers that were looking to use it, or the banks that purchase the tax credits, don't want the uncertainty of you might exceed the cap, and so the project won't go. So this one just follows what's in place for federal and state right now.
What is the fiscal notice?
Of the whole bill,
Is it still 10 million or?
this one right here, yes, we're putting a cap on this one of 10 million annual cap on the 10% credit portion, and that's kind of the most expensive part of it.
But the other one, it doesn't have a cap.
It doesn't have a cap, but the expected, through some data that we received, the estimated expenditure for that particular one it increases what's already being done in the state by about $2.5 million a year. So it's a low.
It's 2.5 million then roughly.
Roughly. These are, the spread on the fiscal note is wide, but we reduced the 10% property number from 1.2 million pieces of 1.2 million structures to 77,000 structures.
So I just want to make sure, so far we're at 10, 2.5, 2 million. Is that on things you guys are looking at? So
Yeah.
14.5, and then you got one more piece there.
We've got one more piece, and that piece is 2701, and that's amends the Kansas Rural Housing Incentive Act to expand the use to include economically distressed urban areas regardless of the population. And that really doesn't have a fiscal note on it. Those are bonds, and so there's no fiscal note. In fact, over the long term, it could be a positive. If the areas start developing and people move in and businesses move in, it could be a positive.
Senator Fasquedo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kelly. So would this be retroactive? Let's say that that work is already being done in that area. Can they ask for help with this bill, or is it for new projects?
I think on a lot of these, you have to have them approved ahead of time on it, so,
My guess they'd all have to be approved through Department
yeah.
of Housing, but I don't know, Jason, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, so it may miss a few, but in a lot of the areas, there's not much going on, and hoping that this will spur some development in these areas and move some people in the upstairs.
Okay, and there's no fiscal note to that.
No.
So, 'cause them are just bonds. One other thing I would like for you to think about, and then maybe we just have a 5-minute sidebar each side.
Okay,
Expanding, in one of my other bills I had, the RHID. Jason, can you kind of explain that piece that we had of the RHID? And I would like to maybe just add that in my 375 bill, if possible. There'd be no fiscal note to it. So, Jason?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the Senate did consider Senate Bill 376 amendments to the Rural Housing Incentive District Act. First, those amendments would amend the definition of city to include the city of Topeka. And then it would also amend the projects under that act to include renovation or construction of residential dwellings on lots with existing infrastructure where that infrastructure had been in place for at least 10 years. And then the amendments were looking at the funding for that act. For the next 2 fiscal years, it would increase the transfers to the State Housing Trust Fund from $2 million to $20 million in each of the next 2 fiscal years. And then would earmark 75% of those monies would be used for cities and counties for rural housing development, and 25% of those monies would be used for cities or counties with a population of 60,000 or more for urban housing development. But it would also allocate that at least 3 million of those loans and grants would go to counties with a population of not more than 8,000, and at least yeah. You just want the RA? I thought that was
I didn't want the whole bill,
just the expansion to Topeka.
yeah.
Okay, then ignore the housing trust fund.
I've got some expansion language, I'm looking for it here, but it's on RHID, just expanding it.
so just the city of Topeka and not the lots and everything, or, okay, okay.
Been looking for it, I've got too many conference committee reports here. I might have to get that to you, I don't know what I've done to it. Okay, let us take a sidebar, and oh, right here, this is 12. I think section 12. Let's do Topeka. Probably just Topeka. Yeah. So our RHID would be Topeka, just adding it. Why don't we take just a quick sidebar? I just So your offer is on our 375 to do a 10 million cap instead of an 18, and then a 6-year on, rather than a 10-year on the credit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then actually, now the only thing that we will have to, because the $10 million cap on our 2569, 10% level is not in our House amended bill, so we will want to add that as another one. The other ones that you have, we amended heavily, all of them in committee. And so they're in a position that we think they're, as far as fiscal note and as far as what they do, in pretty good shape.
Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kelly, just clarification on that. Is that and or if they are a historical site? Is it for buildings or just you keep saying you want them to be upstairs?
Oh.
Just clarify.
Well, if a historic building could still have upstairs work done on it, they could qualify for a state, could qualify for federal credit too, but we're interested in the state. So you can do interior and extra, but they all have to be approved before you do them under the state and federal.
And the definition of historic is 50 years or older.
50 years or older. Yep.
Okay, let's just take a 5-minute break, and do you guys want to step out, or? Yep, let's come right back with what we want to counter with. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. It's technical language to just clean up on 369, the pass-through, but we'll have that for you when we're finishing it. Our offer would be, we definitely want to put the RHID piece in for Topeka. But on 369, where you guys dropped it from 10 years to 6 years, we would counter with an 8-year, and that's really a bottom line for us. And on 375, where you guys taking our 18 to 10, we would go to 13. And I'll tell you what we'll do on that 13, we will tweak our percentages going to the rural counties. We will take our counties 8,000 and less, and we will put 2.5 million in that pot. And then our second batch from 8,000 to 25,000, we will do another 2.5 million there. And then the remainder would go from 25,000 to 75. So it's a little different than, and we would accept your offer on yours. They all seem pretty reasonable.
Well, we'll discuss it. We may have to come back.
That's fine.
But the one thing that on 2268, we liked your thought, and on the limit, and would it work if we just said that no individual can have more than one guaranteed loan at a time?
Probably what I would look at is, I mean, what kind of houses are you wanting to build? I would say no more than cap it at, 50, 75,000 on it. But I mean, you're trying to get the house built too, so I don't know. I mean, maybe it's 100,000. That's a pretty good sized house. That's $500,000 house. So
I
think I would put some, I would have some kind of cap on the top end, because if you have $100,000 houses, that's all you're going to get. And I think you're trying to get more than that done.
But you're saying cap at a max of 100,000 per individual.
Yeah. And maybe you want a better cap than that even, but that's probably something. Yeah, the actual fund, no, the credit.
The actual gap,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you might even want less than that, I don't know, but, I mean, you want it to go a little ways.
Yeah, I guess the housing market these days.
Yeah. The way I look at it is probably about a 20% credit in a lot of ways. So you're getting 80% investment, but, how much do you want one, single property to give money to?
Would that be just one loan per person per project?
You could put that piece in and cap it at one loan too, but I just hate to see someone go build $1 million house and get a $200,000 credit from it.
Okay, we'll kind of look at that and see if we can come up with something on that for a cap. So if got it right, you wanted to have the RHID for Topeka included in 375.
Yeah. Or wherever it fits in this new bill.
Okay, and then move the 6 years to 8 and the 10 million to 13, and change the 8,000 or less, 2.5 million go into it, 8,000 to 25,000, 2.5 million, and the balance goes into the category of over 25 to 75.
Is that the right numbers on the top end, 75? Okay, yeah, whatever the third category is. Yeah, that's our counter, and I think we're close. And I mean, why don't you check it out and let us know. We're pretty free in the afternoon. I might have another chairman trying to catch me for a conference, but I think to finalize this, it'd be pretty easy now.
Okay, I think we're back on the floor at 2.
Okay.
So after.
Just let me know. You're the caller, and unless we're going to another conference committee, we'll be ready. So call me when you're ready.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.